welcome to tonight's Winooski DRB meeting. I'll call the meeting to order. It is 6:34. We've got one substantive agenda item this evening. We've got an agenda that's been published online. Before I get into that, I'll briefly introduce the DRB and its members. My name is Kevin Lumpkin. I am the chair of the Winooski DRB. Other folks on the Winooski DRB are Matt Basowitz, Harlan Miller, David Weisberger, Aaron Guyette, and Elsie Goodrich. I forget who's vice chair and who's secretary. We just changed all that stuff. Who's the vice chair? Is that Matt? You, Matt? And Harlan, you're still our secretary? Great. So we're doing this. This is our first meeting via webinar, which means that we are in a format of Zoom where we can all see each other as the panelists, but we can't see the other 18 or so folks in the group who are just watching this as kind of a stream. I believe that you can use the chat if you need to communicate with us at all. I see that we have one indication that you are watching, which is great. So if you do need to participate at all or say, hey, I want to make a comment, please use that chat function. We should, I believe, our staff have a list of all folks who have indicated a desire to participate in this hearing. One thing that's weird to do over the internet is swear people in. Normally, when we're all together in a big room, I just have everybody raise their hand and swear them in all at once. So I'll just tell you that if you choose to give testimony tonight by making that choice, you are swearing or affirming that the testimony you give before this body will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So keep that in mind. Turning to our agenda, first item after the call to order is changes to the agenda. Anybody got any changes to the agenda? Moving right along. The second item is public comment. This is required of every public meeting in the state of Vermont. It is not the opportunity to comment on the application that's before us. Rather, it's an opportunity for folks to come in and make any general comments that they want that would be relevant to the jurisdiction of the DRB. Typically, we don't have any public comments because folks are usually just here to talk about the application that is on for the evening. But if you do have any public comment, let us know in the chat and you will certainly be heard. I take it that no one has indicated a desire to make any non-specific public comments in their remarks in advance via email or whatever?
That is correct. We've not received any advanced requests for public comment for items that are not on the agenda. I would also just mention that there is in the participants window, there is the option to raise your hand, which can also work. And for the individual who's called in, I believe *9 will be a hand raise as well.
Great. Okay. So seeing no public comment, we'll move on to item 4 on our agenda, which is to approve the previous meeting minutes. They have been posted online. They're available for review. Anyone have any discussion, comments on the previous meeting's minutes? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion to approve those minutes. So moved by Matt.
Motion to approve.
Moved by Matt. Any seconds?
I'll second.
Seconded by Aaron. All in favor, say aye or raise your hand. Aye.
Aye.
Looks like unanimous approval. The meeting minutes from our last meeting are approved. And we are on to the public hearing for the appeal of the zoning administrator decision, 133 Elm Street notice of violation. I understand that the applicant is present via council, and this is your opportunity to make a presentation to us. So I would suggest that we elevate Attorney Lynn to participant or whatever you do to make his video appear, and let's go for it. And just for the members of the public watching, typically the way this goes is we hear from the applicant, and then we hear from anyone who wishes to speak in favor of or against the applicant. We sometimes invite the applicant back to respond to whatever they've heard. And then we typically leave this public session, go into deliberative session, which will today be via a different Zoom link. And then we typically issue a decision in writing after that, just so everybody knows the process. All right, go for it.
Well, good evening to all of you. Kevin, how are you?
Doing well. How are you,
So
Pietro?
I'm all right. So I'm here representing Vermont CBD Labs. They are the current occupant of 133 Elm Street. And Vermont CBD Labs is a business where they store and dry hemp in the location at 133 Elm. It's a warehouse. They do have a lab where they process the hemp into distillate and isolate, but that's in Williston. So the only activities that are occurring in the Winooski location are storage of Vermont grown hemp from Vermont farmers and drying it so that it doesn't rot in the storage process. The issue here, as I understand it, was that there were concerns about the odors that emanated from the drying process, or maybe it was from the hemp before it was dried. And as a preliminary matter, this has been an unusual time. There were drying and storing activities that were not consistent with the usual pattern. The usual pattern will be that the hemp is harvested in the fall, typically in late September, October, and then the drying activities begin in November and December, and they're usually finished in the early part of the new year. For a variety of reasons, most of which having to do with COVID-19, things were delayed this year, and a lot of the drying occurred during the summer months when people were out and about and windows were open. Those are sort of the factual circumstances. The legal arguments, I think, are probably the ones that you all need me or want me to make, or maybe my client wants me to make to you. And those are really twofold. The first is that this activity conducted by Vermont CBD Labs at the location in Winooski is agriculture, and it's by statute exempt from your authority. And why do we say that it's agriculture? Well, there's a statute that we cited in the letter to you, series of statutes in 6 VSA in the 560 range. And those statutes make legal the growing and processing of hemp as an agricultural activity in Vermont. It places in the authority of the Department of Agriculture the ability to make decisions around who is licensed, to create regulations having to do with activities in the industry, and understand this, that growing hemp is an incredible opportunity for Vermont farmers, where in the past they may have grown corn or hay or other crops for purposes of agriculture, maybe sometimes for sale. The yield from hemp is a multiple of the yield from these other activities or from these other crops. And so as a result, hemp is an incredible opportunity for Vermont farmers. Part and parcel of that is collecting the hemp and drying it. And that's what we need the Winooski location for. It's a large facility. As I understand, it's about 100,000 square feet. And there is an absolute motherlode of hemp located there now. We believe that under the statutes, it's exempt from your authority. The second argument that we would raise with you is that there is no violation of your standards here. I was looking at
So can I pause you right there and just ask a question?
Yeah, please.
So your notice of appeal lists that first argument, and then I actually didn't see anything arguing that, assuming you're unsuccessful in persuading us that as a legal matter, we can't enforce municipal regs, I didn't see a challenge to the logic of the notice of violation itself. In other words, I didn't see an argument, it doesn't smell as much as you think it does, or it doesn't create a nuisance. Is that a problem for you?
No, because I don't think that you're your appeal procedure requires an exhaustive list of all the items that we want to dispute when we get there. In fact, all it requires is that we object and file an appeal to you. And the grounds for the appeal, certainly we've identified one of them, but I would also argue to you that we're entitled to argue that factually the level of nuisance, if you will, the complaints don't rise to the level required by the ordinance. And, specifically what it requires is a showing that it poses a hazard to the health of people, and the rest of it, we can't ever in a million years satisfied. So the real question for you as a group is there strong evidence that would substantiate that what we were doing, and I guess some people like the smell when I read the newspaper and many didn't, but an unpleasant odor, I would argue to you, is not something that constitutes a hazard to neighbors' health. And for that reason, you also ought not enforce the notice of violation against us. And really, those were the two issues that I wanted to raise with you. First, that we don't come within the purview of what you're doing here because it is agriculture. And if you look at the statute specifically contemplates that this agricultural activity will encompass both the growth, harvesting, and the processing of the hemp and probably the drying of hemp, which is what happens here. The storage of hemp is as part of that processing is the second and not the former. We're not growing the hemp there. And then secondly, that we want to be good neighbors. Nobody at Vermont CBD Labs wants to make people unhappy. We can assure you that in the future, when we do this work, it's going to happen seasonally and most likely at a time when people will not have their windows open. I mean, this is not a fight that anybody at Vermont CBD Labs ever wanted to have with any of its neighbors. On the contrary, being a good neighbor to them is good business for us. So our argument to all of you is we understand, we hear people, but for some legal reasons, perhaps factual reasons, you ought not enforce the notice of violation against my client.
Go ahead, Matt. I got a question.
I had a question. In the interest of being good neighbors, is a filtration system an option?
Well, so let me say this, Matt. If in the future there's an issue, we're going to be doing this at a time when, again, people's windows aren't going to be open. We're not all out as much in October and November and December as we are in other parts of the year. If that's an issue, my best advice to my client is going to be fix it, because having people mad at you because you're making intrusive odors is not good business for them. And so, the short answer is we will make efforts to make sure that neighbors do not feel that we are a burden to them in the neighborhood.
So on your legal argument, which is the one I kind of prepped for in reviewing all these documents, why isn't the answer like, that's a great argument, but we need to hear it from the Agency of Ag, and we've got a letter from them saying we haven't been asked. If we were asked, we'd tell you yes or no, they're exempt or they're not. And it kind of feels like we shouldn't substitute our judgment for theirs. What would be your response to that?
Yeah, well, look, I mean, the Agency of Agriculture's position is either right or it's wrong, right? I mean, ultimately, a court will have to decide if for some reason you were to decide it against us, and or maybe this time you decided it for us, but somebody else had to challenge it in some bad town in the southern part of the state, and it got to a court, then the court would have to decide. I think what I would say to you, Kevin, is that these are the kinds of decisions where agencies can take a position, but ultimately a court may or may not be persuaded. I would suggest to you it's a new set of statutes having to do with hemp, and it's going to be an issue of first impression for a court as to whether or not this constitutes agriculture. Right. I think we win that argument for the reasons I articulated.
The challenge for us sitting here today is that it sounds like we don't have an interpretation one way or the other from the Agency of Ag, and it is challenging for us to be like the first deciders of this question, not having the expertise that the folks who would review the RAP application at the Agency of Ag would.
Yeah, and I get that. On the other hand, it's one of those things, Kevin, you're one of the smarter lawyers I know. And my guess is that when you, and so when my guess is when you look at the statutory scheme, I'm going to start sounding like a lawyer, and the rest of you can kind of sort of glaze over now. When you look at the statutory scheme and you look at the regulations that were generated and you see the license which is issued by the Department of Agriculture, and you take the penumbra of all of those legislative/regulatory documents, I think what you should conclude is that, yeah, this is something that falls under the umbrella of agriculture. It is regulated by the Department of Agriculture. It is a process that is specifically contemplated in agricultural legislation. It is part of agriculture. That's the argument I would make, and that's the rationale I would hope you'd follow.
David, go for it.
My research and reading seems to indicate that not all agricultural processes are off limits for the zoning boards to have jurisdiction over. And that seems to be did you read the response from Eric, from the zoning administrator, to your appeal, which was on the website?
I didn't see it.
It seems to be making the argument that the state is regulating and issuing licenses for hemp processors and not denying that what they're doing is an agricultural process, but that it's not the same as the designation that would exempt these operations from our authority. That there's two separate, there's a list of it's called required agricultural practices. There's 11 of them, and they seem, and like Kevin said, I don't think we're going to make this determination, but they all seem to be activities that actually happen on a farm rather than off-site processing of materials. But it seems that not all agricultural activities are exempt. Do you have any comment or insight?
Yeah, so yeah, let me make the analogy for you. I'm sorry, your name is David?
Yes.
I'm sorry, your name winked out and my memory is bad because I'm old. So David, the analogy that I would make to you is a little bit like hay, right? Like if you've got a farmer and the farmer collects hay, harvests hay, puts it in a barn, and some neighbor doesn't like the smell of the hay, then is he engaged in agriculture by virtue of growing and keeping hay to feed his animals? And I think we would all agree that he is. This is the processing. The drying isn't what smells. It's the hemp that smells, right? And so, the question here is having hemp present in a warehouse where it is part and parcel of growing and later selling hemp. Is that in any meaningful way distinguishable from growing hay and keeping that in your barn? And what I would suggest is the answer is no.
But it doesn't.
In this case, the barn is in Winooski. And the hay is like grown somewhere else. Sorry, go for it.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, but it doesn't sound like we're supposed to be making that designation, whether it is or it isn't, right? It sounds like there already is a process at the state level that determines whether a business is agriculturally exempt or not. So in reading the letter from Eric, it sounded like he had reached out, or the city had reached out to the Agency of Ag to inquire about the agricultural designation. And that's what Kevin was referring to earlier, that there had been no request on behalf of your client to receive that designation. And so I don't think that this board would want to provide that designation if it happens at the state level.
Well, wait a second. I'm not making an argument that we have gotten some designation from the state. What I'm saying is that there's already a statute that identifies certain kinds of businesses that are exempt from your authority. And so, Aaron, what I'm saying is that our business, by virtue of being agriculture, is exempt from your authority. And that you, as a matter of law, should not decide that this notice of violation can be enforced against us. That doesn't require any action by the Agency of Agriculture or any other state government entity.
Okay, and maybe Eric, can you clarify that then? As I read it, it sounded like it did require an action from the state.
So as I understand the regulations, the required agricultural practices and the process that is set up through the Agency of Agriculture is that you can have a use that is an agricultural type of use, but does not qualify to meet the definitions of the required agricultural practices and therefore get the agricultural designation that would exempt that use from local regulations. The required agricultural practices has a lot of very specific definitions. For example, certified small farms or farm in general or agriculture. And in order to qualify for the agricultural designation, that the protections of those required agricultural practices afford, the specific use or property or operation needs to go through that process and get that designation. Otherwise, without that designation, the protections afforded from the Agency of Agriculture through the agricultural designation wouldn't apply. That's my understanding.
Well, so all I would say is that's going to be a question of law for you board members to decide. And then, of course, the second issue is we're not making anyone sick.
I am mindful that we have a unusually high number of participants who are not currently on video and may want to make comments. So I don't mean to cut off any DRB members' ability to question the applicant. But Attorney Lynn, is that your presentation? Do you have more to? Sorry, David. What you're raising your hand, David Rue.
I was just scratching my head, sorry.
Yeah, if you will, Kevin, what I would suggest before we get to public comment is to have Eric speak so we can at least get the exhibits in the record. I know this is not an on the record hearing, but I do want to make sure that everyone knows that we have about 20 exhibits as part of this hearing related to the notice of violation. And I don't think that there's anything that Pietro would object to. If Pietro, I don't know if Pietro's even seen this list, but it's a history of the correspondence between the city and the appellant, as well as items related to the issuance of the notice of violation.
David, I don't think I'll have any objection. That's fine.
So for the moment, do you have anything more you'd like to present to us, DRB members? Do you have any more questions? Elsie.
So I imagine that some of the people that are on the call are going to be raising their personal issues. And I know that we've seen some testimony that they are experiencing some physical illness side effects from this. I'm wondering if you're arguing that this does not raise to the level of causing a hazard to the neighborhood and the community. What you think would actually constitute a hazard to the community? What level would you, what threshold would have to be reached to acknowledge that this was substantially harmful?
Yeah, so I'm going to default back to the actual language of the ordinance. And I'm not arguing that it's not something that people find annoying. I'm not saying that it's, all I'm saying is that you as a city have specific language that requires that it be demonstrated that it poses a hazard to the health of people. And what I would suggest to you that that's a meaningful threshold, right? Especially when viewed in the context of the other language in the paragraph. And it talks about things like excessive soiling, meaning that we're causing soils, not just a little, but a lot, to go onto other people's property. We're damaging the property. We're harming animals. What I would suggest to you is this creates a very high standard to be reached for this specific ordinance. And that's what I'm arguing to you.
On that point, I have two other questions. One is that the notice of violation includes a bullet point that the odors are causing nausea and headaches and impacts to children's sleeping patterns, which could all conceivably be considered health impacts. And then the second question is the last sentence in the paragraph of the regulation says all emissions shall comply with Vermont environmental protection rules. I'm not aware of what those are and what levels those impose on odors. Are you familiar with those rules?
Well, I don't think anybody has argued in connection with the notice of violation that we somehow are not consistent with those rules. You know, as I came here, my understanding, as imperfect as it might be, is that really what we're talking about is that people were unhappy with the smell, the odors coming from Vermont CBD Labs' place of operation. And that was the issue. And I immediately, as I looked at your performance standards, saw that the one standard that might apply here is that it might pose a hazard to the health of people.
Wasn't nausea and headaches a health hazard?
Well, that's really going to be a question for you to decide. And, you know, I would suggest to you that something that poses a hazard to the health of people is, you know, it's a pretty high standard. And I've not spoken to the people who are claiming they developed nausea because of something that was happening in our business. If there was a momentary fit of nausea, that's one thing. If they had extended periods of nausea and couldn't sleep for days and were, you know, exhausted all the time because of it, I'd admit that's quite another. And so you all as a group are going to have to grapple with that distinction.
Thank you.
Anything else for the applicant? Or the appellant, I guess. Okay, do we want to get exhibits in the record? All right. David, Eric, exhibit time.
Sure. I can run through this, David, unless you want to run through them.
Go ahead, Eric. You're the one that's put them in. So
Yeah. So included for exhibits of this record for this hearing tonight are we have, I believe, 22 exhibits at this point. So I'll just go through the list. Exhibit A is the notice of the violation that was sent on August 10th. Exhibit B is the notice of the appeal provided on August 19th. Exhibit C is the notice of the hearing for this meeting that was posted at the property on Elm Street, and David's holding up the exhibits. Exhibit D is photos from that hearing being posted, the notice being posted at the property. Exhibit E is the proof from the Burlington Free Press that indicating that this meeting was going to be held, that was run on August 28th.
that's exhibit F, Eric. Exhibit E is the other notice.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, exhibit E is the specific language of the notice for the public hearing. Exhibit F is the notice from the Burlington Free Press. Exhibit G is a memo that was sent to the adjacent property owners per statute, notifying them of this hearing, including the notice of the public hearing. Exhibit.
I realize these are backwards, so it's a little imperfect. But
Exhibit H is the list of folks that got that hearing notice, the adjacent property owners, including a map of the properties that we sent the notice to. Exhibit I is the agenda for tonight's meeting. Exhibit J is the memo from me as the planning and zoning manager and zoning administrator, providing the specific information on the history of this notice and the additional information with that. The let's see. Exhibit K is a photo that was provided from a resident of the exhaust coming off of the facility. Exhibit L is an email exchange between city staff and the operators of the lab, the appellants in this case. Exhibit M is a statement from Vermont CBD Labs that was shared with our city council on July 6th about their operations and kind of an overall statement of their business. Exhibit Exhibit N is an email requesting attendance at the city council meeting to present information and additional questions following the July meeting. Exhibit O is an email exchange between a city resident and the appellant with the resident's information redacted, just asking additional questions about the product and any potential health hazards that might be coming from the drying operation based on chemicals or other items they're including. Exhibit P is section 4.13 of the city's regulations on the performance standards. Exhibit Q, oh, sorry, David. Exhibit Q is a letter from the Agency of Agricultural, Food and Markets dated September 8th, providing information on the status of VIII CBD Labs status for their agricultural designation. Exhibit R is a map identifying the specific or the general locations of complaints that were received in the city. There's about 25, I believe, 25 or so complaints that were received between April and September from residents in and around the property and throughout the city in general. Exhibit S is the statutory reference for the agricultural limitations on municipal zoning bylaws provided by the appellant. Exhibit T is the Vermont hemp rules effective May 21st of 2020, also provided by the appellant. Exhibit U are the industrial hemp registrations from 2019 and 2020 for the VIII CBD Labs, their registration with the state of Vermont as an industrial hemp grower and processor. Exhibit V will be the sign-in sheet from tonight's meeting. I've been recording everybody's names that have signed in so far, so I will include that. And then finally, Exhibit W is a written statement from a resident, Seth Gillum, who is also, I believe, signed up to speak tonight, providing statement of opposing or I guess supporting the notice of violation. And that is the record of exhibits we have at this point.
Great. So for anyone homeschooling, great refresher on the alphabet. Anything we need to discuss about the exhibits? Attorney Lynn, you're off of video, but I think you're still on audio. Is that right?
Yes, on both counts.
Any issues with the exhibit list?
None at all.
Great. Okay, so with that, I would suggest that we move to comments from other folks who are in attendance and watching from the audience. We will put Pietro back down to a participant to watch the proceeding, and then I believe how this is going to work is we're going to elevate folks one by one to become panelists and be able to turn on their videos if you choose, and certainly audio to make comments. typically our process is to ask folks to try and limit their comments to 3 minutes, particularly if we have a lot of folks, many of whom will be sharing the same concerns. I don't mean to make a hard cap. I'm not going to have like a timer, but I would just ask that folks who are sharing their perspectives and their experiences be mindful that there are seem to be a lot of people in line, and just keep that in mind. And certainly if we have questions for you, we will ask them.
So Kevin, to that point, we asked for folks to sign up in advance of the meeting if they had specific comments, and Paul Sarn, our communications coordinator, who is on this call, but you can't see because his video's off, has that list, and we'll be bringing those folks in the order that they signed up first. Just so that you're aware that if that's okay with you, I guess I should say. And then Paul can turn people's mics on and off for other folks that have comments or questions or want to speak, either by indicating so by raising their hand in the raise hand feature in the participants window, or *9 for the folks that have called in.
Sounds perfect. So we'll run through that list, and if you are in attendance but have not signed up in advance and you decide you want to make a comment, just raise your hand or put a message in the chat, and Paul will add you to the list.
Thanks, everybody. So first up, we have Jeremy Collins.
How's it going? You're perfect. You're on mute. You were.
Hello, everybody can hear me? All right, hello. My name's Jeremy Collins. I'm a local entrepreneur in the community. I live in Winooski, and I've lived here for about a year, and I really have grown to love the community. And so this one was really an interesting one. I know there's going to be a lot of people opposing, the smell. And I just wanted to weigh in as a perspective that might be a little bit different. So the violation occurred August 10th. That's about 39 days from now. 39 days ago, if you count the weekends, which is $200 a day with the violation. So we're almost $8,000 for their violation. One of the things that I'm kind of concerned about is HVAC. That might be an option with this particular situation. As a business owner, I've actually looked into HVAC for a property. It was about 1,500 square feet, and the HVAC expenses for that small property was going to be around 15 to 20 grand. So that's a lot of money. But one of the things I really want to do as a business owner in the Winooski area, I really want to, let's not persecute these companies. Let's promote them and to see what they can do to become better. This is some tax revenue for the cities, as well as a low contact industry that could be something that really could benefit the city of Winooski in the future. I still would suggest punishing these people for, being a violation of our ordinance and law, but let's push them to be better as well. So one of the things that I wanted to think about is suggesting half off the violation fines, be waived by the by the council here, but only if they use that half of the money towards improving their HVAC so that the ventilation is better for the surrounding people. And I wanted that to be known. I don't actually live within smelling distance of the community, or I'm not really employed by anybody from the company. I'm just a local concerned citizen. So that's all I have to say. I appreciate your time.
Great. Well, thank you for sharing that perspective. Any questions for Mr. Collins? All right. I think we're on to the next person. We'll do the little swappy thing.
All right. So next up, we have Kate Ford. Kate, go ahead whenever you're ready.
All right, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. I'll keep my comments fairly short. I don't like the smell. I don't begrudge their business. I'm happy that Winooski has more business. Every town needs that. I'd be perfectly happy with it existing if I didn't smell it. I live on the far side of Winooski, and I smelled it numerous days this summer. It took me a while to figure out what that smell was. And I finally was with some friends who live on Mallett's Bay Avenue, and we saw the truck coming up the hill spilling like disgusting sludge water out of the back of it. And we're like, that's the smell, and followed it down to the hemp factory and slowly figured out what that was. I'd been smelling it. I live on Hood Street near East Allen, close to the interstate. So truly the kind of far end. And I smelled it multiple days throughout the summer. I just find it off-putting and disgusting. And I don't have air conditioning, so I had my windows open for, the majority of the summer. I'm a little concerned that that he said that the drying schedule was affected by COVID, because what he described is that it would be collected in the fall, dried throughout the winter, and finished by early in the year. COVID hit in March, so it should have been finished. So I feel a little concerned that if that didn't work out this past year, what does that mean for future years? Again, I'm totally fine with the business if it doesn't smell, but I hate going to my friend's house. It smells so bad over there, and it often smells very bad over here. That's
great.
What I say.
Thank you very much. And you got your address in there. David's has put a request in the chat that anyone who speaks, just let us know where you live, so that we know where you are in relation to the appellant. Any questions for this speaker? Oh, looks like you're all set.
Thanks.
All right, so next up we have Jennifer Childress. Jennifer, go ahead when you're ready.
Okay, can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, thanks for having us. I live on River Street, so I'm pretty close to the facility. I have been a homeowner here for 6 years. I have a lovely front porch that we just redid, and I spend a lot of time out on that front porch. However, that was definitely impacted this summer, as you could not sit out on my front porch and eat a meal when the plant was processing. It did cause nausea to the degree that I didn't want to sit out and eat my meals on the porch. If you've ever walked down by the facility in Memorial Park while it's processing, it is enough to give you a headache. And it has definitely impacted our quality of life. And also wondering about how it will impact our ability to sell this home, provided we should want to do that in the near future. Because I can't imagine any prospective home buyer coming to see this home and smelling that smell and being like, yeah, I want to live there. So yeah, in terms of like hazardous, causing something terrible, it's not terrible, but is definitely negatively impacting our lives. I too support businesses in Winooski. I'm very supportive of the hemp industry in general, but I find it difficult to live with the smells that are coming, and I would really like to see proper filtration on those fans. And that's all I have to say.
Great. Well, thanks for sharing that. Any questions for this speaker? All right. Thank you very much.
Okay, so next up we have Kara Montague. Kara, go ahead when you're ready.
Hi.
How's it going?
I'm good. As with the other callers, just would like to add my support for the cities moving ahead with these violations. I am, frankly surprised that VIII is sort of so comfortable with being such a bad neighbor to the community and to the people who live in Winooski. Not only is it sort of like a terrible, wretched smell, but the fact that like, oh, it might also happen in winter and in spring, and at any time we just want to be outside, they could be drying hemp, and it's pretty wretched. My only other perspective is also, as a small business owner, the idea of bringing somebody to my house when that smell is happening is quite frankly embarrassing and disturbing. So yeah, please move ahead.
Can you share with us what part of town you live in, so we know?
Sorry, I live on West Street.
Great.
So fairly close.
I didn't mean to cut you off if you had more to say.
No, my kids also hate the smell.
Any questions for this speaker? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, so next up we have Richard Joseph. Richard Joseph, go ahead when you are ready.
You're currently on mute, so there you go.
Hi, Richard. Can you hear us?
So if you're currently speaking, we can't hear you. It looks like your mic is on, so you're not on mute. So if you have access to the chat, can you let us know if you're trying to talk to us and we're not hearing you? Something. But maybe that the speaker has stepped away from his computer for a moment. My suggestion, oh, we got a chat. Nope, false alarm. My suggestion would be to move him to the end of the list and keep going.
Sounds good. Richard, we'll come back to you. Okay, so next up is Deek. Deek DeCaro, when you're ready.
Hi, I'm Deek DeCaro. I live on Forest Street, probably a good golf ball drive from the plant. Lifelong resident of Winooski, lived here for 21 years, and I was pretty actually excited to see activity back down at that plant. I would argue a bit with Pietro on his farm and barn. You know, I moved next to a railroad track. I expect that. I did not move next to a barn, and I don't expect that activity to be in the middle of the city. So I'm kind of curious a little bit about that use of an analogy. The smell is quite overwhelming. We don't have air conditioning. It was very difficult to sleep most evenings. And I'm going to argue that I've been down here a long time. There are kids and people out in this neighborhood through winter. Nobody stops going out because it's suddenly winter. So, you know, I think I would suggest or encourage the board to find in your best interest without thinking of just considering us as neighbors, and let the agriculture department and let the situation play itself out. But I would strongly urge you to advocate or back up Eric, and let's let this play out, because the condition is quite disturbing, and probably it just very, very difficult to sleep, eat outside, or enjoy at all. Thank you.
Thanks. Any questions? All right. Thank you very much.
Steve. All right, so next up we have Seth Gillum. Seth, go ahead when you're ready.
Great, can you all hear me?
Yep.
Great, thank you. So my name is Seth Gillum. I live up on Maple Street. So I haven't lodged a formal complaint, so I won't appear on that map, but from where I am, relative to the facility at 133 Elm, you can definitely smell the dirty bong water smell pretty consistently in my backyard. So I actually have 3 points I'd like to make tonight. I'll try to be brief. First is I have to just take umbrage with a statement made by the counselor earlier that CBD Labs wants to be good neighbors to us. I frankly just don't find that believable. I have a master's in business administration in sustainable business. I know a lot about what businesses can do to be good neighbors. Performing community outreach is one of them. I don't know who CBD Labs is. There's nobody who works for the company represented at this forum. Instead, they sent an attorney to come and try to mollify community concerns with kind of boilerplate statements like, we want to be good neighbors to you. Actions speak louder than words. Having a presence in the community by letting us know who you are is really the way that CBD Labs can become good neighbors, number one. Number two, I really think you should think very carefully about the claim that the facility doesn't pose a hazard to residents. there is very, very little evidence on how cannabis affects the human body for good reasons. And that's because it's been illegal for a long time, whether it's hemp or cannabis sativa or marijuana. Everybody's endocannabinoid system is different. And there is a real lack of good peer-reviewed research about how odors from a hemp facility could affect the health of residents. So I would say in this respect, the onus is on Vermont CBD labs to prove, using the precautionary principle, that their work is not causing negative health effects to people. If somebody gets a migraine headache from a hemp odor, it is not up to that person to prove that the hemp is causing it. It is up to Vermont CBD labs to prove that their product is not, in fact, causing those migraine headaches. And I think that they would need to point to some sort of substantiated research that says these products are safe in a residential setting. And my third point, and this was in the letter that I outlined earlier, and the F-35s are going over, so if we have to...
we might need to take an F-35 break. Welcome to Winooski Municipal Government. All right, I think it's abating a little bit. If you can still hear, go for it.
I can hear you all just fine.
All right.
Just hold up your hand if you want me to stop, because they're going over again.
I got these nice headphones on.
Okay.
I can certainly hear.
Okay. So my third point, and this is in the letter that I asked to be entered into the record, is I think I offer a fairly unique perspective on this, because unlike anybody else who's spoken or anybody else who has introduced themselves in this meeting, I actually manage a commercial cannabis facility. I manage an indoor commercial cannabis facility that is licensed in the state of Vermont. We grow, dry, cure, and extract medical cannabis. And I would say that the technologies that are out there to mitigate odors and be good neighbors are very common. They are really easy to install. They're fairly cost effective. And they're really easy to maintain. So any effort on the part of CBD Labs to say that it's not cost effective or that it wouldn't be effective or anything to that regard, which is not something I frankly heard the counselors state, but I just need to go on the record in saying that this is not the only community that's doing this. This has been an issue in California and Colorado and now Oregon and Michigan for a long time. It's an issue in Canada. Frankly, it's an issue anywhere they have a tax and rec cannabis market. And there are solutions out there that, frankly, good neighbors would be proactive about installing in their facilities. The fact in that photo that you can see material emanating from the facility is shocking to me. That there is visual exhaust from drying hemp is shocking to me. I can't imagine a facility that would have that. I really cannot. And that's all I have to say.
Well, great. Thank you for sharing that perspective. Any questions? All right, so I'll note while we bring up the next speaker that anyone who's submitting comments in the chat, I am at least reading those. I see we have a couple from a couple of different folks. Looks like one has been passed through Terry from Amy at Hickok Street. So those are, I believe, getting in the record. So rest assured that, that those are getting through to us.
They are. Thanks, Kevin. We are saving those. I want to double back to Richard Joseph, put him back on the queue. Richard, go ahead if you're ready. I believe Richard is a first-time Zoom user. Richard, we do have an email between the two of us if you would like to submit your comment that way. If this does not work for you, we can do that.
So I'm seeing Richard is unmuted, but not hearing anything. Richard, can you hear us? Okay, so my suggestion would be, why don't, Paul, you follow up with Mr. Joseph via email. I would suggest we can certainly allow any comment that he would like to submit to be submitted in writing. There is a provision to allow any interested party to do that. So as long as it's okay with the other members of the board, I would suggest we avail ourselves of that for this participant. Seeing a lot of head nodding. Great.
Thanks, Kevin. Richard, we'll loop back around on that. There is one person with their hand raised. There is Susie. Susie, go ahead when you're ready.
Hi, all. This is Keith Thompson. I'm on Susie's computer.
Great.
And appreciate you guys hosting this. I think that the exemptions for agriculture and forestry are incredibly important for Vermont. I work in the forest industry, and I think the ability of farm operations and forestry operations to conduct business outside of municipal regulation is incredibly important and valuable for consistency of opportunity and to maintain the culture of the state in many respects and the character. With that said, the counselor stated that this is exempt and didn't demonstrate why. It just tied it to the agriculture. But I think that any business, agriculture, forestry, or otherwise, that is exempt should have the burden of proof to demonstrate its exemption from municipal regulation. And the language that was used basically puts the onus on Winooski to make the call, and the tone of it seemed to suggest out of fear of litigation that maybe we shouldn't. But as a resident on River Street, I think we absolutely should. The ease of making a farm determination on the agriculture website is just ridiculously easy. Agriculture.vermont.gov/RAP has an easy form that any business can fill out to get a determination from the Agency of Agriculture. And so I think that looking at the definition on that site, this doesn't meet the definition of farming. The processing elements of the farm definition look to on-site storage and production. And I don't think the hemp is produced on-site. So as a resident of Winooski, I hope that we feel strong enough in our position to say that this is not a farm operation exempt from municipal regulation, and would make a decision and hold to it unless told by the Agency of Ag that it is in fact exempt. So that's, I think, the main point I want to make. I think the second point is goes back to Deke's message. We've got kids. We've been playing outside all year round, and we started smelling this in the winter. Having the windows open is not the measure of if this is impacting us. We live in the city, but we also live in Vermont. We want to be outside. Playing in the backyard is something that we should have the opportunity to do, and it seems like opportunities for that are going downhill, as the F-35s demonstrated. The drying process, I am surprised, and I took the photo of the steam coming out of the building. That was a rank, incredibly strong odor. And seeing the dumpsters behind the building, I was wondering if that's where the odor was coming from. But the strength of the smell coming out of that building, it makes me wonder, is that simply a drying process? And I don't know. I know that there are a whole bunch of processes that I may not be aware of, but the concentration of that seems really extreme for a simple drying process. I've never dried anything that smells as strongly as that. And so I would appreciate an understanding of how that, if it is exempt, how that is simply a processing aspect of drying hemp. And that's all I've got. Thank you.
Great. Thanks for sharing that. Any questions? All right. Anybody, I noticed we got another message via chat from Christine Foley, and that's been entered into the record, and we'll consider that. Anybody else on your list, Paul?
That does it for the list.
All right, so last chance for anyone to let us know in the chat or by raising your hand that you'd like to speak. Typically, we do now invite the applicant or its representative to come back and respond to anything they've heard. So if we want to elevate Attorney Lynn again, and no pressure, don't need to say anything. You can certainly rest on what you've already said. But if you do have anything you'd like to point out, then we typically do offer that opportunity at this point before we go into deliberations. Oh, Matt, are you trying to say something?
Question for when Attorney Lynn comes back.
All right, guess you're already on the hot seat. So if you want to unmute, and your choice if you want to turn on your camera or not.
I want both of those things. There I am.
Okay.
All right.
So at this point, have you seen the photo that has been discussed a couple times now of the exhaust coming out of the building? Can you verify that that is indeed exhaust from the drying process of this product?
No, I can't verify it. I can't dispute it. Matt, I just don't know.
Okay.
Well,
and
you can show me the picture, but I'm still not gonna. I looked at the picture.
Yeah.
I just don't know.
Okay. No, that's fine. And the second question I had is, you'd mentioned that this was an off time, and other people brought it up, and that normally the drying doesn't take place this time of year. How long has this plant been in operation? Is this the first crop that's come through? Or has this been going on for years and we just didn't notice it before?
Yeah, so thankfully you asked me a question I think I know the answer to.
Okay.
Look, so they got the dryer in the spring, right? The technology had to be invented for this. Nobody, at least in Vermont, had industrial dryers.
1 second.
Oh, maybe.
Sorry.
35 break.
Is it that loud?
Well, I've got my window open, so it's fairly loud for me.
Wow.
There's one more coming up.
So Matt, let me finish the answer to you. Yeah, so they didn't get the dryer until pretty late. So
Sorry, you got to pause for 15 seconds. All right, that one's going away. We got like 5 more seconds. Matt, are you like looking at him?
Oh yeah, I can see him. It's all like I don't see anything right now, so I think it was just those two. Yeah.
Great. All right. Sorry about that. Go for it.
Hey, I'm back on. All right. So they actually had to, as it was explained to me, they had to engineer and invent this dryer. It's huge. And so they had it shipped out from somewhere in the Midwest, and it got here, and then there were some fits and spurts. And so they didn't get to drying these things until much later than they ordinarily would. They had for a long time the hemp in cold storage over in, I think it was over in, geez, it might have been near Costco or something like that in the old Rhino food space. That was super expensive. And so eventually they got this dryer up and going, and that explains why it was over the summer months. So this was drying from last year's crop. And that got slowed down a little bit because of COVID and the inability to have people to do the work, and it kind of stretched out from the spring into the summer. They're all done now. I mean, there's no more drying to be done. And because there've been some problems with the hemp market, I don't think that they're going to be bringing on a lot more hemp this fall. So there's not going to be much in the way of drying activities this year. The concept is they're in the process of developing new techniques to process the hemp. There's some technology involved that Vermont CBD Labs thinks is going to be pretty revolutionary. And so the idea is if this catches on and the business proves to be as viable as the owners hope it'll be, that we're looking at next fall as the time where they're going to be taking on a lot more hemp, and then they're going to start doing the drying in, again, late September, October, November-ish.
Okay. So yes, this is the first time that this has occurred in this building. This is the first time we've been through this process, is what you're saying.
Yes.
Yeah. But you mentioned that you had to invent the process. You had to invent the machinery to to get this going. How much research was done into knowing exactly what is in that exhaust, and should it be filtered, or should it be handled? Should this be happening in the most densely populated community in the state? Is this harmful?
Yeah, so I'm not, look, I don't pretend to be an air quality expert, Matt. That's like not what I do. I don't know. All I know is that the drying process is essentially like a huge pizza oven, right? Like it dries the hemp. That's what it does.
Mm-hmm.
So they take out the stems, they leave the flower, they send the flower through a big machine that essentially with heat dries it out.
Okay. Thank you.
It doesn't, there
That's
are
all
no
I had for questions.
chemicals involved in that process.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
David, go.
Mr. Lynn, are there plans to expand the processes in the future to do other processing of the dried product?
No, so they've got a location in Williston. That's where the lab is located, and that's where they take the hemp, the dried hemp, and they turned it into a distillate or isolate. So that's a liquid form. So it's pure CBD at that point.
So this facility will only ever be for storage and drying of the.
Correct. Yeah.
I just wanted to confirm, because we got a question about it in the chat. You said they're done for the season now. Is that correct?
They are done. They are done.
And,
I mean, that's what I've been told. They're done.
And do you know how
And they
recently
have
the?
I walked by there yesterday and the doors were open and there were fans blowing nasty odor out of there, for what it's worth. That's when I walked.
And so all I can tell you is the drying is done. I mean, obviously it's a storage facility and the dried hemp remains there.
Okay. Anything else that you wanted us to consider as part of the appellant's case?
No, on a professional / personal level, I heard what people had to say, and I rest assured I will relate that to the people at VTCD Labs, and notwithstanding the what I consider to be high degree of skepticism, I know these people well enough to know that they're going to hear you and hopefully try and make sure that we never have this experience again, regardless of what happens here tonight. So sorry.
I wish someone from the company could have been here tonight, because that really goes a long ways with public.
Yeah, so listen, I understood someone was coming. I am surprised that they are not. And all I can think is something must have happened, or there must be some connectivity issues or something like that, because the operations person there, Julia Pearl, was committed to coming tonight. And I think Eric will tell you that I told him she would be here. So something must have happened. I don't understand why she's not here.
So we're getting some more night flights. I'll
say
goodbye.
goodbye.
We're getting requests to pause. So I think if I can summarize what you just said, Pietro, for the folks who could not hear, because I know you're not hearing them, but we are. I think what you just said was you expected a company rep to attend, not sure why. Your understanding is that they are kind of committed to this process and you'll follow up?
That's exactly it, Kevin.
Great. Sorry to everyone listening who's trying to filter through the night flights. And I will note that we're getting comments from folks who are unable to participate verbally. And just rest assured, everyone is seeing those. We don't need to read them into the record, but we are seeing them and receiving them when we have been for the whole time, and we'll certainly take them into account.
Did we want
Matt,
to take some of those questions? Can we ask some of those questions while Pietro's here?
You can ask any questions that come to your mind. And Pietro, I
Amy,
assume you're seeing the chat as well.
Yeah, Amy H on Hickok Street.
Right
Yeah, asked if, I'll go direct quotes here, has an environmental study, impact study ever been done on this business? And if not, should it be? I don't know if that's, I don't know if you can answer that question, or maybe somebody from the city can answer that.
It's not something I can answer.
Okay. I'm looking through to see if there's anything else.
So Matt, I'll just,
yeah.
As far as I'm aware, the city has not done anything from an environmental impact perspective on this use. It's the use is permitted through our zoning regulations as an allowed use. The industry and laboratory use that was proposed, so that wouldn't have been something we would have required.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll just chime in to say that formal environmental impact studies are usually only issued in connection with federally funded projects where there's a review under NEPA. So this is not the type of situation where environmental impact study would be needed because there's no construction, no federal funds involved, etc.
All right. Anything else? Excellent. So I think we are ready to move on to the next item on our agenda, which is study updates, followed by other business, followed by adjourn. Usually we just speed right on to that last one. So see you later. Any city updates or other business?
So the only thing I wanted to update you all on from the city updates perspective is the hearing that we had last month or I guess the last time we met, the detached cottage for George Street. They have appealed your decision, so that'll be going forward to the environmental court. Nothing for you all to do, just wanted to give you that information. And I believe that's the only update that I had from city side for you all.
Anything else, members of the DRB, that we should discuss? Seeing a lot of shakes of the head. Eric, did you have anything else?
The only other item I would list for other business is our next regular meeting is scheduled for October 15th. The deadline to get anything on that agenda for hearing is tomorrow. I have not received anything or had any discussions so far, so I'm not anticipating we'll receive anything. There's no other administrative business that we need to cover as a body for that meeting as well. So we potentially could cancel that meeting, which Matt, I guess would work out well for you anyway. Great. So more on that to come.
All right. So for the benefit of folks who are still watching, I see we're getting participants dropping off, but we are likely to go into deliberative session once we adjourn the public portion of the meeting. We have a different Zoom link for that is not open to the public, but that will be happening. And as I said at the beginning, our decisions issue in writing. They're required to issue within 45 days of this hearing. Usually we beat that by some amount of time, so stay tuned. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Moved by Harland, seconded by David, it looks like, and Matt. Great. All in favor? Aye. All right. We are adjourned. I will see everyone. Can we take like a 4-minute break and